Bienvenue sur Fight Minds. Hey, how'd I do?
Well, Eric Nicksick, what a pleasure to have you here. To be honest, I didn't expect this at all. I was just complimenting you on like your amazing career.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for the time that you're giving
Oh,
us
it's
at the
my
moment.
pleasure.
Like,
it's my pleasure.
I actually, when I saw you, I was like, oh, if I could ask, you know, usually we have papers and documents. I thought I'm gonna write down some things. We never know if you can say yes. So first, what are the best qualities to be a high-level MMA coach?
Oh, that's an awesome question. I think when you commit to this craft or this field, it's a life of servitude. You are really giving yourself to the fighters. Time management, I think, is huge. Accountability, I think, is huge. But the sacrifice, I think, not only that you have to put in with your fighters, but also what takes away from your family. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that you have to really kind of give into, but once you commit to this type of career, I think you know, the rewards outweigh all the other things, you know. So I love it. I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
For sure, I can imagine. Then, what have been the greatest challenges that you had to face?
I think that's it right now. The biggest thing for me, and the challenges will always change as your career changes, right? As your career goes on. Early on, I think for me, like breaking through and then trying to find my own identity as a coach. For where I'm at right now in this era, is my kids are getting older. Oh, so the travel for me becomes a little bit more difficult because my oldest daughter's 16, and soon she's going to be leaving for college. So I miss those moments more now, opposed to what I did earlier when my career was starting.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what goes through your mind when you have to develop like a game plan? Like you have been doing so many great things, like with Strickland, with Ngannou. Like, to be honest, I couldn't believe what you did. Like this is a great example. Like when you have Ngannou that's coming from an MMA world, we know that he has some striking abilities, but against a Tyson Fury is like what goes through your mind and how do you develop that?
Lean heavy on your athlete and understand what they do really, really well. You know, Sean Strickland versus Izzy Adesanya, you know, we use Strickland's assets to our ability, right? Like we try to find what made us really good. How do we apply it against Izzy? But biggest thing is, how do you cover up your holes? What game plan do you expect them to try to implement on you? And how do you hide those things? So that's also very important. I always stress on how do you grow in between camps. So with Francis, for example, when my first camp with him was Junior Dos Santos, and then we had Jairzinho Rosenstruck. In between those camps, we worked so much on our wrestling and did so many things, to the point to where when we end up fighting Stipe, that became an asset to us. All the while, we didn't have to show much of it. We were knocking everybody out. But you're developing those things outside of camp. So I think that's very important from a coach's perspective, is when you have an athlete who's full-time at your gym, is having the in-camp, the specifics to your game plan, and then you're outside of camp, and how do you grow and how you develop new tactics and new things.
Our media is called Fight Minds, and we really want to focus on like the understanding and analyzing, like not just like you know, like the beef in between people. We actually want to focus on like really analyzing. And we heard so many times like differences between people that say, oh, you should try to develop each area of your game, and some people say no, at the opposite, you should really focus on what you're good at and try to compensate with the other things. Like what's your stand on that?
I would like to develop all of the areas. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to be a black belt or the best at all of them. So I do feel like, and that's good, kind of goes back to my last point, was develop those things outside of camp. Try to work on those weaknesses, because if you can develop those things, when you get into a new camp, then those attributes are something that we can add into a game plan. But if we're just kind of cover up the holes all the time, you see it a lot, especially in guys who are very, very good strikers that come from a kickboxing background. What do they tend to do all the time? Hit pads, hit pads, because that's where they feel the most comfort and that's where they look the best. But if I said to you, if you did striking techniques for an entire year, you might only get maybe 1% better.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
But if we worked on all the things that we need to get better at, if it's the wrestling, the grappling, the jiu-jitsu, whatever those things may be, you might gain 30, 40% leaps and bounds of your skill set later on down the line that we can use as you get better as a fighter.
so I want to give you specific things, like I really want to have your opinion on that. So in France, there is this crazy mega star that's booming. His name is Cédric Doumbé.
Oh yeah, very much, yeah.
So this guy now, he started at some sport, like in kickboxing, and then after made a transition. Say a bit like Alex Pereira and Adesanya, but not with the same strategy, right? What would you recommend to a type of fighter like this now that he's gonna, like, he filled up a stadium? What should he do to become like a full MMA fighter? Like, do you think that he should really use his skill set, like focusing on kickboxing, or the opposite, trying something different?
Well, remember what got you here and lean heavy on those things. But understand, if you're a specialist somewhere in kickboxing, for this particular example, what are most opposing fighters going to try to do is to take you down, right? They're going to try to take away your best attribute. So yes, definitely focus in on the things that you're great at, but understand that when people are going to fight this guy, they don't want to stand and bang with this guy.
Yeah, for sure.
They're going to want to try to take him down.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, to that last point, is Cedric going to get any better at kickboxing? Maybe a little bit. But now if he can defend a takedown,
it's going to have huge impact.
It's going to have huge impact on his game. So I think for him, he's already a world champion, which tells me his mental state. Okay. He's willing to work hard, and he got here for a reason. So there's no reason that he wouldn't get better at those little things and those little attributes and the assets that will make him a world champion.
So I have a last question, because you're here in Mexico with us.
Yes.
And I didn't know that you had like a young breed like this one. So I know him, but I was so surprised that you were together.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about him? So Daniel, I would love you I would love to have your input about him. What do you think about him? What do you see for him?
Oh man, I love the kid to death, the person. So I met Daniel after his Contender Series fight. We began speaking on Instagram, and this is something that he always wanted to do, was come out to Vegas, and he wanted to make his debut. He came out to Vegas, he trained with us for a while, and unfortunately we didn't win our debut, but we did lay a lot of groundwork. And for me as a coach, you know, sometimes I implement too much game plan and not allow the fighter to do the things that they do best. So I always take that loss on me. Now we start to grow. We're starting to see him understand the terminologies, the verbiage, the training, and all those things. And we saw what happened when he fought Veneta. We saw what happened when he fought Aguilar. And now that I feel like we're just scratching the surface. The more and more he's in the room in the gym and he's training with guys like Dan Ige and Kai Kamaka and Jeremy Kennedy, he's starting to understand more and more what I'm looking for. You know, at the end of the day, the artist needs to be under their own creative control. My job as a coach is to give them paint and allow them to paint the picture of the canvas they want. And Daniel Zellhuber is the new breed of what I have at Extreme Couture. He's a guy that I feel like the more he's around the room and in the gym and training and more camps we have together, the more you're going to see this guy skyrocket.
Amazing. I think it's a good way to end. Thank you very much for your time. It was really a pleasure.
Yeah.